right, guys, welcome aboard here as we are, of course, in the midst of the divisional playoffs, but the NFL coaching search continues to spin and spin and spin. Let's talk about it right here on Sports Talk Nation. All right, so we are now entering what I consider the nitty-gritty part of the head coach and GM search period, because right now we see a number of teams obviously make a couple of hires. We see teams that are going into their second round of interviews, and then there's one team that is still kind of, how should we say it, still trying to get through their first round of interviews, and that's the Jets. And that is they are starting to scare me right now. I understand, and I gave them credit in my last video saying, hey, look, I'm glad they're trying to do this and, making sure there's no stone unturned and trying to interview as many candidates as they possibly can. But at the same time, you got to start to trim down this list. I mean, this is getting into obscene and bizarro territory right now with the way that they just keep interviewing every single person under the I mean, it's getting crazy. And now we're getting to that point where the Jets already lost one of their top candidates for the GM spot in Mike Borgonzi. Borgonzi going to the Tennessee Titans on Friday afternoon. And now that's a big name off the list. Borgonzi was in the Chiefs system for a very long time. And he is going to go to Tennessee where they have the number one pick. I'm sure at some point he'll be able to pick his own coach after next season, and he's going to be able to have control there in Tennessee for a while. And he was a big name that is now off the list. And now that's what's concerning me. If the Jets keep, taking this process very slowly, they're going to lose more big names off that list, and it could be a name that you don't want the Jets to lose in on. And I'm not just meaning from GM standpoint, but also from the head coach standpoint. So we've seen Vrabel go to the Patriots as the head coach. We've now seen Borgonzi go to the Titans as a GM. And now you're starting to say, okay, where else, as we move now into what you would hope to be the second round of interviews here for the Jets, who is going to emerge here as a potential candidate? And will there be links to potential head coaches? So a couple of names. Obviously, we all know that the top two names linked to the Jets as far as the head coach position is concerned is obviously Aaron Glenn and Brian Flores. And as I mentioned in my last video, there are two very stark differences. You have Glenn, who's a very popular guy with the fan base, been with the Jets, played with the Jets for 8 years in the late 90s into the early 2000s, and has had a very long, steady career as a coach. 11 years in the NFL as a coach, both the Saints, now with the Detroit Lions. He has done a wonderful job with the Detroit Lions as the defensive coordinator as they get ready for their game against the Washington Commanders. And to me, he is the number one choice. He is the obvious choice right now for the head coach of this team. But that doesn't mean he's going to take the job. I know there are the rumors that he could be leaning towards the Jets or that he would prefer the Jets, depending on how you want to phrase that story that came out last week. And then Brian Costello, who broke that story, then clarified on even his podcast on the New York Post saying, hey, look, that it's still a very fluid situation because you have a team in the New Orleans Saints who could circle the wagons and go after Glenn and get him because, hey, look, Aaron Glenn spent a big part of his coaching career in New Orleans and on Sean Payton's staff. So there's a familiarity there with the Saints, and there's a comfort level with him with the Saints. So do not be shocked. And I know there's going to be a lot of disappointment if it does happen, if Aaron Glenn ends up in New Orleans. And if they do, then I don't know what to tell you, as far as the head coach search is concerned. But to me, he is number one on the list. And then Flores, obviously, we can go back and forth on Flores. To me, the concerns are obviously all the stuff that we heard over the last few weeks, even from guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick, the inability for Flores to connect with people, his issues he had with Tua Tagovailoa, the rumors that he was a dictator down there in Miami. Those are things that would concern you, but he has tried to rebuild his image. He has done a good job of Minnesota as a defensive coordinator. He has been with Mike Tomlin's staff and now Kevin O'Connell's staff each of the last couple of years, and he says, and people connected to him say he is a different person, and that may be the case. That may, in fact, be the case. And if he ends up being the Jets coach, The only example I can give you of a guy who went from being a coach who a lot of people say, let's stay away from this guy, he has a bad reputation with players, to being a totally different person would be Terry Collins with the Mets. I mean, when he was the manager of the Houston Astros in the early 90s, people couldn't stand him, and he had that bad reputation. And then when the Mets hired him, everyone was like, really? Terry Collins? And he ended up being one of the more revered managers in Mets history. So things can happen that way, but we'll see with regards to Blory and Flores. Those are the top two names. But after that, as I've alluded to, and I look at this list, it's just slim pickings. But again, it all depends on who the GM candidate could be. And the names that come out are Lance Newmark, who is the assistant GM of the Commanders, Chris Spielman, the CEO of the Detroit Lions. I know there's Ryan Grigson's out there too, a VP of Pro Personnel. I know nobody wants him because of what he did with the Colts when he was the GM over there. And then there is kind of the dark horse that's kind of come to light over the last couple of days here, and that is John Eric Sullivan, who has been with the Packers for seemingly forever, really over 20 years. But what is his vision? What is his plan? You're bringing this guy from Green Bay, and as I said, does he want Aaron Rodgers here? Isn't this guy part of the front office that kicked Aaron Rodgers out of Green Bay? So if you're the Jets fan, and there's segments of the Jet fan population that want Aaron Rodgers back, you want Aaron Rodgers back, and you want this guy to be your GM? And then also, with regards to who's coaches, you have to give me something better than Jeff Hafley. You really have to give me something better than that. I understand he's been a assistant coach for a long time, both at college and in the NFL. Had those 4 very underwhelming years at Boston College where they didn't do a whole heck of a lot. They did win a Fenway Bowl, that's something, but that's not going to light up the fan base. That's not going to get people saying, oh my God, here come the Jets. You got to give me something better than that. That would feel like a very typical Jet move, and that would scare me. We also have Thomas Dimitroff out there as well, more experienced GM with a lot of success. I would love to see the Jets go out and get him, but we'll see how that plays out. But the Jets need to get this thing moving, and they need to go out there and make this thing happen in this search and get on to the second round interviews before they lose somebody they really, really do indeed want. So that's the combo that would intrigue me, would be something with Lance Newmark or Chris Spielman, maybe both, if you can swing that to happen, with Aaron Glenn. That would intrigue me most of all. Obviously, as I mentioned, Thomas Dimitroff is the guy that stands out. But the further you get down this list of coaches, it gets scary. And they got the Arthur Smiths of the world, the Matt Nagy's of the world. I know these are names that Jet fans do not want to hear, but they're out there, and it's still a possibility. Both of them are head coaches with head coaching experience. Not great experience, but they do have the head coaching experience. And then there's the name that's popped up over the last couple of days that both intrigues me and scares me, and that is Josh McCown. Now, I understand, look, Josh McCown was a decent Jets player for a couple of years, in 2017 and 2018. 2017, the year that was supposed to be the suck for Sam year. Remember, they were supposed to tank that entire season. And instead, they ended up winning 5 games. McCown played fairly well. They were not good, but they were okay as a team. They were, that's being kind, I think, when you win only 5 games. But he did a fairly good job. He did a fairly good job also of mentoring Sam Darnold his rookie year in 2018. Does that make him head coach material? Maybe down the road. I'm not going to say no, but maybe down the road, because I still think he needs seasoning as a coordinator, as a coach. It's a heck of a jump. He's only had 2 years as a quarterback's coach, one with Carolina and then this year with Minnesota. Only 2. That's a heck of a jump to go from that to head coach when you're now in charge of a full room of players. You go from a small scrum of like 3 or 4 guys in a quarterback room to 60, 70 guys. He might be able to do it, but I think it's too much of a risk to take at this point in time if you are the New York Jets. And I saw the article the other day that, I don't know if it was Tom Pelissero or someone else, but that McCown wants to go from quarterback coach to head coach, and he doesn't want to interview if he's going to get an OC job. He's not looking for the OC job. He wants to be the head man. I think that's too soon. And I know that people pointed out, I saw it in the New York Post this morning, that Andy Reid made that jump from quarterback coach to head coach, was never an offensive coordinator. True, but at least Andy Reid was a coach, both in college and in the pros for a very long time, 17 years, in fact, before getting that opportunity to be a head coach in the NFL. I still think McCown needs some more seasoning before he makes that jump to be a head coach. If he makes that jump now, and the Jets make him the head coach now, the narrative that we saw swirling around that athletic story, that the Johnsons like to have control of things from the football standpoint, that story will continue to swirl again. And it would look like, with an inexperienced head coach who only has 2 years as a quarterback coach, that the Johnsons wanted a coach that they can control. That would be a terrible narrative for them. It would be a bad narrative and an unfair narrative to McCown. It wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be fair at all. So, to me, I think he needs to stay in Minnesota or take an OC job, step back a little bit, and I think eventually one day he will get a head coaching job, and he might be pretty good, but it's just not now. Not this kind of job, not right now. The Jets need a coach who has experience, who not just has experience, but it can command a room and get these guys to do what they need to do on the football field. That's what they need to find. It's Glenn, it's Flores. I hate to say it, but then again, this is what's going to happen here with folks when this list gets smaller and smaller. You're talking about guys like Arthur Smith, Matt Nagy. You're really going down the list, and then this mystery candidate in Jeff Hafley from Green Bay. It's scary. It's scary. It really is getting scary now. I kind of wonder why. I wish the Jets had been a little more aggressive in pursuing a head coach that had not only experience but successful experience, like Mike McCarthy. But I know we've been down that road before in 2019, and wanted the Jets to get McCarthy back in 2019. They went for Adam Gase. I understand it's a two-way street, but they're not going to do that. They're not going to bring him in. Sounds like he's going to either the Bears or the Saints, depending on how that goes. Seems like there's a lean towards the Bears. The Jets don't show any interest there. They know who they want. It's out of this group of coaches they've been interviewing right now. But as I said at the top, if Aaron Glenn is not the head coach of this team, or if he's not picked, I am terrified what this franchise is going to do next. I really am. I don't know what this is going to look like. And I think you should be terrified as well, because the history of this owner, the history of this team tells me that they don't always get it right. And if it's somebody other than Aaron Glenn, or even somebody other than a Brian Flores, who I'm not as enthused about, I don't know what to tell you. I really don't know what to tell you. I would say expect the worst, and you won't be disappointed. That's all I can say. I really don't know what to say. They need to make a move. They need to make a move soon. I hope they make this move for the GM sometime in the next week and a half, because names are going to keep dropping off the list. Ideally, I would love to have Dimitroff as the GM, maybe Lance Newmark as well, or a team up Newmark with Spielman if you could pry him away from Detroit. That would be my ideal. Everything else is, well, up in the air. It really is at that point. So, folks, leave your thoughts below. How do you feel about where this search is going right now for the Jets head coach and GM? It's getting kind of scary right now. Like and subscribe. We'll talk to you next time. All right, folks, now before we get out of here, you want to know what the betting line is and how things are going? Well, I spoke to a guy from VSiN over in Las Vegas. This was part of my Fox Sports On the Road show on Fox Sports Radio New Jersey, and that is Josh Applebaum. Let's take a listen in who he thinks, what the lines are looking like right now for the Jets head coaching search. I mentioned to you before we came on air about the coaching market, and for of course, obviously here we're in New Jersey, Fox Sports Radio New Jersey. Obviously, the Jets looking for a new head coach. Aaron Glenn came out. Someone who knows Aaron Glenn or someone connected to him said that he is leaning towards the Jets, but we've also heard the Saints get involved. How's the betting line going for this? What's the sense as far as that coaching search is concerned?
Yeah, so as of right now, Aaron Glenn is the favorite. There are a couple books out there, and again, some books offer these prop bets or exotics, whatever you call them. Some don't. So if you do want to bet on it, you got to make sure that Not only are you finding the book that offers it, but shopping for the best line because you could see different numbers at different books. But as of right now, Aaron Glenn is the favorite. He's plus 150. Brian Flores is right behind him, plus 300. And then you got a bunch of other guys, Joe Brady, Rex Ryan, Mike
Hmm.
McCarthy. There's some names down the list here that are much less likely to happen. But Aaron Glenn did, say some, positive things about the Jets. Maybe you want to bring in a defensive guy, which could make some sense here. I know they just had Robert Salah, but Glenn as of right now is the favorite. And then I'll just throw a couple more at you. If you look at Chicago, Ben Johnson is a
Mm.
plus 175 favorite, but also he's a favorite for the Raiders job as well. So you can kind of play those props off each other. And then does Deion Sanders go to the Cowboys? Right now he's even money plus 100 at DraftKings with Kellen Moore right behind him, Cliff Kingsbury after that. So
Mm.
yeah, there's some jobs open here. I think as bettors, you got to remember though, the books aren't always setting these lines with like inside information. They're kind of just going off of, what reports are saying, what media people are saying. So these markets can really move a lot. But as of right now, those are kind of your favorites.